The long wait complete. Americans elect a new president. What does the vote mean, and where does healing begin in the United States?
For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power. And we don't just respect that, we cherish it.
Following the divisive campaign, we'll look at the stunning results on This Week in Jacksonville. And after that deeply personal campaign, voters have spoken. Donald Trump is the president-elect, pulling off an upset victory. Within hours of that announcement, people from both parties spoke about putting aside their differences and working together. Speaking from the Rose Garden at the White House Wednesday, President Obama called on Americans to support President-elect Donald Trump. Mr. Trump said he's ready for reconciliation and to accept help.
This is not the outcome we wanted or we worked so hard for, and I'm sorry that we did not win this election for the values we share and the vision we hold for our country.
With tears in her eyes and surrounded by supporters, Hillary Clinton publicly conceded the election.
This loss hurts, but please never stop believing that fighting for what's right is worth it.
One by one, Republicans congratulated their nominee for winning the White House. President George H.W. Bush tweeting, "Barbara and I congratulated real Donald Trump, wishing him well as he guides America forward as our next president. His family is in our prayers." While celebrating his win, Trump set a different tone than the rhetoric he used during his campaign. Instead of conflict, Trump says he wants peace.
It is time for us to come together as one united people.
That sentiment echoed by President Obama. He says he looks forward to a peaceful transition from an Obama presidency to a Trump presidency.
Everybody is sad when their side loses an election. But the day after, we have to remember that we're actually all on one team.
A full table chewing on this one. As we work through the results, we're going to have comments from all of us. Former Congressman Jason Altmaier is with us, political consultant Burt Ralston from Jacksonville, a host of Political Mojo at TV Jax, Meredith Johnson, and Sherry Treadwell is with us, who worked in the George W. Bush administration in the Department of Commerce. Here's the big question. Anybody surprised? This was a shocker on Tuesday night, right?
Of course. Yeah, I think everybody is surprised. It's not something anyone anticipated happening. I think everyone understood Trump had a possibility of winning, but when you actually heard that name called at the end of the night, it was a shock.
Sherry, what do you think about this? We all have expressed before we went on air, this was pretty surprising, right?
So I was uncertain what the outcome was like anybody else, but I talked to thousands and thousands of voters during this election season, and I just saw an energy amongst the Trump camp that I didn't see in the Hillary Clinton campaign. And if that was going to multiply out through the rest of the country, I thought that Trump ends up winning in the end, at least winning Florida.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when we talk about the campaigns, Trump's campaign it was a different style, obviously. And I'm not just talking about the candidate, but the style of campaigning. We knew that Hillary Clinton's campaign was really well organized, ground game, all those sorts of things that you look for. Burt, do you think this is a Trump went out there and grabbed it, he won it, or is this more of a Hillary Clinton didn't achieve what she wanted to and she lost the election?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, clearly Trump and his team reset the map, focusing a lot on rural areas, ex-urban areas, folks that maybe we didn't have access to a few years ago. But I think Hillary also had history working against her. The most difficult thing in American politics to accomplish is for the same party to hold the White House for 3 consecutive terms. It's happened once in any of our lifetimes with Bush 41 following Reagan. And that's simply put, people get to a point where they want change. Oftentimes it's considered a referendum on the previous administration. You layer that with Ms. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, having 25 years in the public eye in the United States, and it became a referendum on her also in her time. Trump came in, he was the change candidate, Clinton was the status quo candidate, and I think in the end, when we saw the new Obamacare premiums come through, that the status quo was just no longer acceptable to the middle class.
Yeah, Meredith, I want to get you to weigh in, and I want all of us to hear President Obama's speech, at least a portion of it, in a moment. But what do you think about what happened here this past week?
I think there was two really big unknowns at the beginning once Trump won the primary. And I think that was, are Democrats going to be excited enough to get out? Is there really a big enthusiasm gap, especially among black voters? And there was. And is Trump really going to bring out all those people who support him in higher numbers than we've seen before? And that happened as well. So it was kind of the confluence, I think, of those two things that happened that got Trump over the hump.
What a fascinating election cycle, though. So President-elect Trump spoke first early Wednesday morning, and then we heard Wednesday from Secretary Clinton. And then President Obama spoke and added to that message of needing unity and putting the pieces of America back together.
That's what the country needs. A sense of unity, a sense of inclusion, a respect for our institutions, our way of life, rule of law, and a respect for each other. I hope that he maintains that spirit throughout this transition, and I certainly hope that's how his presidency has a chance to begin.
So some pretty impressive words. I think a lot of us thought this is what America needs at the end of this divisive campaign, and so many people so opposite ends of the spectrum here. We needed to hear from each of the candidates, the president-elect, the former Secretary of State, and President Obama saying, let's do what Americans do. Let's peacefully transition here. How much of an impact does that make on you and what you heard from these folks this week?
Well, I have to say, so I have two things to say about that. But first of all, I was actually really disappointed the day after Election Day to turn on the television or to log in onto Facebook and to see a lot of people, unfortunately, from the left immediately jumping into fear-mongering and name-calling. He hasn't even taken office yet, and they're already declaring a Trump presidency a failure. People on Facebook using terms of racist and sexist, and all of his supporters being part of that. And that's just false. It's wrong. It's divisive. It's hateful, and it's not what our country needs at this time. So I hope that they will take the advice of President Clinton, Secretary Clinton and President Obama, and that they will actually heed their calls to unity.
So I certainly understand why some people are fearful or hurt by what happened. We knew half of the country was going to be upset about this.
But there's a real, scary thing for a lot of people. I have a lot of LGBT friends. They are terrified that their marriages are going to be taken away. And if you're a true constitutionalist, you believe in equal protection under the law. So these people truly are in fear to have equal rights for their families, and they're very scared. Minorities are scared. We've seen hate crimes go up this year. I mean, white Americans who voted Trump in, he had very little minority support. So I think these people have a very valid reason to be terrified. And I saw a lot of people on the right as well really rubbing it in people's faces and some really nasty comments as far as that. And on the other side, I just saw a lot of fear.
Well, so I want to get this side of the table involved when we come back from a commercial. But I'll tell you what, it's certainly something that I think is still a big issue. That we saw this, again, contentious campaign, and now what do we do to heal? So more as we talk about this from the crowd. First, though, a word about handling your conversations in the wake of an election that has been so tough to handle peacefully and tactfully.
If you say something that you wish in retrospect you hadn't said, it's okay. It's also important to remember to take a step back right now, understand that what you're experiencing is intense, and to give yourself time before you start reacting to things other people are saying.
Today, people will leave for work, school, or just to have fun. Before the day is over, an accident will change their lives forever. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. For almost 30 years, we've represented families at their time of need. Our job is to try and put lives back together, to bring justice. Pain and suffering, lost wages, medical bills are real. Sometimes these injuries can last a lifetime. A lifetime is a long time. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
At Papa Murphy's, love means using only blocks of real 100% whole milk mozzarella. The real deal, grated fresh in-store daily. No highly processed, poured from a bag pizza cheese like the other guys use. 'Cause just like real love, real cheese is better. Share the love with a home-baked, large, one-topping pizza. Just $7 when you order online at papamurphys.com. Love at 425 degrees.
Says it won't let up for a while.
The Cadillac XT5.
What should we do?
Tailored to you.
Wait it out.
Equipped with Apple CarPlay compatibility. Now during season's best, get this low-mileage lease on this Cadillac XT5 from around $429 per month, or purchase with 0% APR financing.
How important is breaking news to you?
I want to know what I need to do to keep myself and my family safe.
We have a crime and safety analyst that we turn to.
It's good to hear from somebody like that, so that way you know that it's an expert.
Channel 4 app, and I get those push notifications. I know when she's on lockdown before she even texts me.
That was something that I found out very quickly.
Y'all always on the cutting edge of everything. The breaking news, I love to watch it.
There's your ring, right there. Crooks pawned it after breaking into your home. But guess what? You can't have it back, even though the thief is sitting in jail.
7 months it was gone. It's kind of ridiculous.
What are we supposed to do?
It's yours, so why can't you have it back? The I-Team investigates. Held hostage. Monday on News 4 Jax at 6. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
To the young people who got into politics for the first time and may be disappointed by the results, I just want you to know you have to stay encouraged. Don't get cynical. Don't ever think you can't make a difference.
So some of the narrative in this wildest election cycle I can remember included the rhetorical question, what are we teaching our children through all this? President Obama saying to young people there, not necessarily children, but keep positive and keep trying. So what are the positives that we take out of this election, and how do we move forward in that positive way?
I think a positive is just that a lot of young people who hadn't participated before on both sides got energized about this race. A lot of them were disappointed by the results. I hope that doesn't turn them off of the political process, but I think it is encouraging that folks who hadn't had the opportunity to participate and have their voice heard got the chance to do that this time around.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks still trying to have their voice heard. I want to show you some of the video from around the country on Wednesday, Thursday, after the election results came in, where folks were protesting, and for the most part, non-violently, and I think all of us around the country are saying, please keep it under control so that there's not violence that breaks out here. But Bert, let me have you weigh in on this, and I think what we were talking about in that last segment was that there are perhaps legitimate fears for folks who say, what is this new administration going to bring for me and the folks that I care about?
Maybe. I say maybe for the term legitimate. The LGBT community understands that same-sex marriage was verified by the Supreme Court. It was not ever talked about in this campaign. I always found it to be a false narrative in order to get a specific end. I think that any of these social issues that we had seen in presidential campaigns previously, they didn't exist in this. They certainly didn't exist in the construct of the Trump campaign. He was very specific, and for all of his lack of discipline, he talked about the economy and he talked about national security, and that was it. I also think it's interesting we're getting numbers now from the exit polling. Hillary underperformed compared to President Obama with African Americans, with Latinos, and with women. And that tells me that something was amiss in her messaging.
Those were supposed to be some of the strengghs, right? I know, Meredith, you wanted to mention that she did. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote.
Just like Al Gore in 2000.
Al Gore in 2000. Did we talk about 2000 here?
Just like Grover Cleveland in 1884, but these are not national campaigns. They are 50-state campaigns, and you design your campaign that way. You don't design it to win a national plebiscite. If they were, you'd run a different campaign. So I've always found that to be a bit of a straw man.
Yeah, I want to talk about where some of the states went. Let's look specifically at what happened in Duval County and with blue-collar counties, I guess, in the state of Florida. Duval County, well known as a crucial area for Republicans. 2012, then GOP presidential nominee Mitt Romney, he beat President Obama in Duval by almost 15,000 votes, 14,878 votes. Romney ended up losing Florida, even though winning Duval. So this year, this was interesting, Donald Trump defeated the presidential nominee for the Democrats in Duval by just 6,400 votes, but then went on to carry Florida while winning the White House. So what was the difference here? At least for a night, it seems like it reshaped some of the assumptions made about how you win the state of Florida, right?
Well, I think that definitely Duval has been moving in this direction for a while. We're a very young city, and young people are typically a little more liberal. And our city is also almost a third African American. So it's been trending this way for a while. We very well could see Duval County turn blue in the next cycle, I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem any longer like you have to win Duval at a big margin as a Republican in order to win the state. That's not what happened.
Let me also
Tuesday.
make the point, if you look at the third-party candidates, Gary Johnson in particular, I mean, that was over 11,000 votes just in Duval County alone. And typically your libertarian-leaning voters would, if only given a dual choice, would probably more likely be a Republican voter.
Yeah. And the question was what happened. I'll tell you what happened. Clay, Nassau, St. John's, Marion, Pasco, they all had historic differences. I mean, Pasco County alone had a 21% differential between Trump and Clinton. And you saw the same dynamic that Duval had in Hillsborough County. So something was going on there.
Yep.
It may be a generational change, like Meredith was saying, or it may have been a strategic change on behalf of the campaigns as to where the votes that they want to chase were.
Congressman, let me have you wrap up, or we're going to run out of time of our segment here, but you are a congressman in Pennsylvania. That's one of the several states that was expected to go blue and went red. What happened there from your perspective? And then we'll move on.
Think about it. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. Ohio generally goes Republican, but the others have not gone Democrat in a presidential race in decades. And I think that was Trump. I don't think any other Republican candidate would have had the same outcome. And I was one of the people who was saying that Trump was the only person out of that Republican field that would not have been able to beat Hillary Clinton. But I think it might actually have been the opposite. I think he's the candidate that was able to draw union and blue-collar households that have always gone Democrat into his camp, and that swung the election for him.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because what you just said was your assumption was wrong. That's all of us.
Yeah.
Everybody thought, well, this is what's going to, and it was all different this time around. I appreciate hearing your perspectives and getting some of your insights here on what was an historic election night and week here in Jacksonville, America. So the table shrinks a little bit when we come back. A.G. Genkarski is going to give us his take on election 2016. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
It's time to shop and buy at Dick Gore's RV World.
Find out why everyone shops and buys their RV at Dick Gore's RV World in Jacksonville. The best new and used RV brands. Absolute lowest RV prices. Only at Dick Gore's RV World. Airport exit in Jacksonville.
Nissan Titan. You can drive a truck, or you can team up with one. Bring along an extra set of eyes with trailer hitch guide and some extra muscle with 555 pound-feet of torque. Take on any job. The newly redesigned family of Titans, featuring America's best truck warranty. 5 years, 100,000 miles, bumper to bumper. Black Friday offers start now. Hurry in and save up to $10,000 on Titan XD.
If you're going to be a good personal injury attorney, it's really all you should do as personal injury work. You have to focus on it to get good at it. The rules, what's admissible in evidence, the way you can try a case, very difficult. At our firm, that's all we do. We don't do anything but personal injury work. So if you've been hurt, for whatever reason, come see a personal injury lawyer. Come see us. It doesn't cost anything. We'll consult with you and give you our opinion. No charge.
Harrell & Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
Make tomorrow awesome with Xfinity TV from Comcast. Right now, you can get Xfinity TV for just $19.99 a month for 12 months with Xfinity On Demand included. Call 1-800-566-8080 today. Xfinity On Demand delivers thousands of hit shows, top movies, and more at no additional cost. So you can catch up on the latest episodes of TV's hottest shows anytime, anywhere. Switch to Xfinity TV for just $19.99 a month for 12 months with Xfinity On Demand included. Plus, ask how you can add HBO, Showtime, or Stars and enjoy award-winning TV shows and movies at home and on the go. There's no term contract and no early termination fee. Plus, it's all backed by our 30-day money-back guarantee. So it's risk-free. Enjoy top shows and movies at a great low price. Call 1-800-566-8080. That's 1-800-566-8080. Xfinity, the future of awesome.
There's your ring right there. Crooks pawned it after breaking into your home. But guess what? You can't have it back, even though the thief is sitting in jail.
7 months it was gone. It's kind of ridiculous.
What are we supposed to do?
It's yours, so why can't you have it back? The I-Team investigates. Held hostage. Monday on News 4 Jax at 6.
The Trumps, America's next first family.
I want to thank my family.
What they did on their first weekend since the historic election. Watch the next Inside Edition.
Monday at 7:30 on Channel 4.
That's the way politics works sometimes. We try really hard to persuade people that we're right. And then people vote. And then if we lose, we learn from our mistakes, we do some reflection, we lick our wounds, we brush ourselves off, we get back in the arena. We go at it. We try even harder the next time.
Florida politics writer A.G. Genkarski joining us for our final segment here. About half of the country really is licking their wounds after this presidential election. So let's talk about that, but I also want to hear your take on some of the local issues and candidates. Referendum 1, for instance, the slot machines measure there about best bet in Jacksonville. It passed.
Right. It passed big time. It passed by about 8 points. Brian Hughes, Tim Baker, the political consultants, they made the sale. They made the sale predominantly to the African-American community, got sale from Democrats. The buy-in wasn't from Republicans in this case.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Republicans are actually weakest in their internal polling, so they stepped up efforts. Legend Center, they had canvassers out, places like that, so it was non-traditional for them.
And that reaching out was about the job potential? Hey, we're going to bring jobs here, and so you should support this, that kind of thing?
Well, that was the sell in the flyers and the mailers, but ultimately it was down to people wanting the right to have slots. So, expanding the pari-mutuel locally, that was a big deal to the people in non-traditional Republican areas that voted for it.
How about that? Tracy Davis wins a spot in the Florida House, even though her name wasn't on the ballot. She was running to replace Reggie Fullwood, but he got out so late because of his legal trouble that his name was still on the ballot. Democrats... they really were kind of concerned about this, but they made sure they didn't lose a spot or a seat in Tallahassee.
Right, and there's really no worry. It was a 20-point race, but Tracy had Garrett Dennis behind her as city council. He's a rising star there. Audrey Gibson, the state senator. The Duval Democratic Party was way behind her. And, you have to give Mark Griffin credit, because Mark Griffin ran against her, ran a good race. He finished down by 20 points, but he ran competitively. He didn't run as your typical Republican. And he's got a future in politics. It just wasn't in that race.
Well, and you couldn't run as the typical Republican in that for that particular seat. And as I understand it, he would have been the first African-American Republican for the State House in that area. So he was climbing the ladder just to try and get there, and even if it was 20 points, right?
Right, but he's well-connected. He'll run for something again, so it was good practice for him. Got good fundraising, so you'll see him again.
A.G., you mentioned State Senator Audrey Gibson. I'm hearing that she may be in line to take leadership role of the Duval Democrats. Is that what you're hearing?
That's being discussed. That's not done until December, though.
And that's a vote by their members, right?
Right. She's given mixed signals publicly. I think they're going to handle it as internally as possible. But yeah, there's going to be a recalibration of that party now that the election's out of the way.
You know, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to get your take on what was the biggest surprise in Florida, or in a Florida race this past Tuesday for you.
Well, you know, I found it interesting. The Senate District 8 down toward the Gainesville, Ocala area, Keith Perry going up against Rod Smith. Rod Smith was ahead in the polls. Keith Perry closed the gap, won by about 6 points, had heavy buy-in from the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee. That was a good pickup because the Republicans now have a 25-15 lead in the state Senate. That's going to help them do what they need to do the next 2 years.
It got kind of nasty toward the end of that race as well.
We saw the ads all up here, and yeah, it was nasty both sides.
Yeah, they both poured in some money there. So how soon do we start talking, not about what just happened this past week, but in weeks to come and the 2018 gubernatorial election here in Florida? It's not going to take very long, is it?
No, I mean, we're going to start talking about that pretty much once we get through Thanksgiving. Gwen Graham on the Democratic side, Adam Putnam on the Republican side. Those are two candidates you want to watch. There's some other people too, but they kind of have the inside track right now. You're going to want to see what Rick Scott does also. Does he run for Senate after all? He's got a political committee with millions of dollars. He's got name ID. He's never lost a race statewide. He might run against Bill Nelson. These are the things that you want to watch in the next coming weeks and months.
You know, Senator Nelson, I mean, he's got history. He's stuck around. Has he had a challenger that would be as formidable, if I can use that phrase, as Rick Scott?
Not like Rick Scott, because Rick Scott is very good at winning 51 to 49 races. You know, he doesn't win by blowouts. He doesn't try to win by blowouts, but he projects credibility. He'll give Senator Nelson a ride.
That's interesting. Yeah, we'll be watching for that, and certainly the gubernatorial race. When I asked about surprises in Florida, did you see that former Governor Charlie Crist is going to Washington after all? He won that congressional race over there.
That wasn't a surprise, and I'll tell you why. Because David Jolly, when he was running for Senate before Marco Rubio got back in, basically said he wasn't going to take money, and he didn't get help from the national or state party. And you know, Charlie Crist is not averse to accepting help. He had Barack Obama helping him, helped out with the Hillary Clinton campaign, and you know, that was the margin of victory right there.
Yeah, A.G. Genkarski, I appreciate it. Great to have you here and part of our show. Appreciate hearing your insights.
Thank you.
All right, This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. And, you know, it's been a big year for JTA. CEO Nat Ford is on our agenda soon. We're working to get him in here to visit with us as well. Don't forget, news4jax.com has all the coverage you can watch about what we just saw in election 2016 and, of course, previous episodes of This Week in Jacksonville. I'm Ket Justice. Thanks for watching.
At News 4 Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.